Imagine paying dues for community harmony, and then being told to rip out the wheelchair ramp your kid needs just to get through your own front door. What would you do if the person giving that order was the HOA president, who smiles at block parties and files complaints at midnight? My name's Jack Reynolds. I'm a widowed dad, a former city fire marshal, and the last guy who thought he'd ever narrate a neighborhood horror story. Cedar Hollow was supposed to be our fresh start, tree-lined streets, porch swings, summer sprinklers, the whole Welcome to America postcard. My daughter, Mia, is 10. Stardust, smart and stubborn in the way that keeps families afloat. After a spinal surgery that didn't stick, she uses a chair most days. We painted her ramp sunrise yellow because, well, she asked for something hopeful. And because I'm an old softy who still thinks paint can change how a day feels, Karen Halstead did not agree. You know the type, pearls in the afternoon, visor in the morning, and a clipboard, somehow, at all hours. She ran Cedar Hollow like it was a cruise ship, and we were the unpaid staff. Standards are what protect our property values. She'd purr in that tone that means you're about to lose your Saturday. Her hair never moved. Her opinions did not, either. At the first HOA meeting I attended, she introduced herself as President Karen, like we were in kindergarten, and titles were nicknames. The first letter about the ramp arrived in late April. Folded, crisp, like a pressed uniform. Unauthorized exterior modification. Color out of palette. Encroachment on aesthetic continuity. I read it twice and laughed once. Then I stopped laughing. They weren't asking for a conversation. They were giving a deadline. 2 weeks to cure violation, or fines of $500 per week would start accruing automatically. The letter ended with a smiley-sounding sentence. Thanks for partnering with us in excellence. It felt like being hugged by a cactus. I walked to Karen's house with the letter in my hand and my calm face on. There's no non-compliance here, I said, careful to keep my voice level. The ramp meets code. It's temporary, anchored, and within the setback. ADA trumps your paint swatches. She tilted her head like I'd recited a recipe for potato salad. Oh, Jack, she cooed. We all care deeply about accessibility, truly. But yellow is loud. Perhaps a tasteful beige, also. The slope is visually assertive. Visually assertive, I repeated. Because sometimes your brain just needs a second to stretch. Mia was on the porch, eavesdropping with a book propped on her lap, pretending to read while not missing a single adult word. She whispered, "Dad, is she for real?" under her breath. I gave her the tiniest, "We got this" nod. Karen, I said, this ramp is not a garden gnome. It's my kid's front door. The smile slipped. A hairline crack in porcelain. No one is punishing anyone, she said. Which is, exactly what people say when they're about to. All modifications must be pre-approved. It's in the handbook. Great, I said. Show me the rule where approved colors can override access. She blinked. It's implied. I used to inspect nightclubs for illegal deadbolts and watch bouncers lie like they practiced in the mirror. That same practiced cheer showed up in Karen's eyes. She wasn't used to someone asking for the line number. She was used to yes. Karen, send me the section, I said. And, look, I'm happy to discuss paint later, but the ramp stays. The next morning, a second letter. Escalation, failure to comply. The fines started on the following Monday. Because nothing says good morning like a bill for being able to live in your house. Neighbors came out of the woodwork. Some whispered, "I'm so sorry," like condolences. Some, bless them, brought cookies and offers to help repaint. And some said nothing at all, which is its own kind of vote. I didn't pay the first fine. Or the second. I wrote a reply instead, 4 polite paragraphs, and 1 sentence that probably made her eyelid twitch. Access is non-negotiable. I attached the building permit, site photos, slope calculations. And because I know how to speak, committee a friendly proposal to add potted shrubs to soften the visual line. She CC'd the Architectural Review Committee, the Compliance Subcommittee, and, I swear, the Events Committee. As if a bounce house could fix this. Her reply landed like a rubber stamp. Declined pending color correction. Mia rolled into the kitchen that night and said, "Can we keep it yellow?" I crouched, so we were eye to eye. "Baby, if you want it pink with sparkles, it's pink with sparkles." She grinned. "What about stars? Now you're talking." 2 days later, I walked outside to find an orange tag zip-tied to our porch railing. Unsafe structure removal ordered. I ran my fingers along the paper and felt it before I read it. The smugness. A private security SUV idled across the street. The driver wore a uniform with a patch that looked official if you were squinting from a moving car. He raised his phone like a speed gun and took a photo of me taking a photo of the tag. "Morning," I said, walking over. "You, with Cedar Hollow." He puffed up a little. "Compliance." "With what agency?" "Neighborhood enforcement," he said. "Which ain't a thing." I smiled the way I used to smile at nightclub managers right before citing them for padlocked exits. "Cool. Then you know you can't tag a permitted structure. And you sure can't tag a ramp my kid needs." He glanced down, mumbled, "Just doing my job," and put the SUV in drive. That weekend, Karen hosted a spring harmony mixer on the green. A quartet played covers of songs that were cool 20 summers ago. Tables were covered in pastel macaron pyramids and gilt. Every time I turned, someone was whispering. Mia parked her chair beside the lemonade and ate 3 cupcakes with the concentration of a small scientist. When Karen beckoned me toward the tent, I already knew the scene: an audience, a misunderstanding, and an invitation to perform contrition. "Jack, can we chat?" she sang. "We can." She motioned to a semicircle of board members, which included a man who introduced himself as the vendor liaison, a title that made my palms itch. She launched into her speech. "We celebrate all families, but we must guard the sightlines that make Cedar Hollow special." "Sightlines," I said. "Right." A board member with a beige sweater nodded. "The ramp's angle is unfortunately confrontational." I laughed. Couldn't help it. "A ramp can't be confrontational," I said. "People can." Karen's smile thinned. "We have solutions," she said quickly. "We can provide a portable ramp you store out of sight and deploy as needed." She actually used the word deploy, like Mia was a tank they'd tolerate if it folded up. Mia's hands went tight on her wheels. "So, I only get to exist sometimes?" she asked. Voice small and sharp all at once. Karen finally noticed the kid she'd made invisible, and did the, "Oh, sweetie," thing that makes my molars grind. "No one is saying that." "You kinda are," Mia whispered. "I picked up the mic from the DJ's stand because I'm, Not subtle. Neighbors. I said. This is simple. A ramp stays. We can discuss paint. We can discuss planters. We can discuss anything that doesn't block a kid's life. There's moments where a street chooses who it is. A murmured chorus of, "Let him talk," bubbled up from folks I didn't even know yet. A few people clapped. A few crossed their arms. Karen's smile calcified. "Fine," she said. "We'll revisit after the monthly meeting." We did not revisit. We escalated. The following Thursday, I came home to find a tow truck hooking up my van. The driver looked sorry. The clipboard didn't. "Order from the board," he said. "Commercial vehicle. It's a mobility van," I said, pointing at the wheelchair decal, the size of a dinner plate. "Yeah. Man, I can see that," he murmured. "But I get paid to tow." I took a breath and did the thing I do when I don't want to break something. I called dispatch. "This is Reynolds," I said, out of old habit. Then corrected. "Jack Reynolds. At Willow Street. I need an officer to verify a private tow dispute. Accessibility equipment involved. The patrol car that rolled up belonged to Officer Lopez." Calm eyes. The patience of a teacher. She took one look, asked for papers, sighed when she read "community violation," and told the driver to stand down. "This is not a lawful tow," she said, handing his clipboard back. "You want a civil complaint? Go file one." Karen emerged from a hedgerow like a theater ghost. "Officer," she chirped, "you can't interfere with board business." Lopez tucked her thumbs into her belt. "Ma'am, I can stop an unlawful tow anywhere in the county. Today, that's your cul-de-sac." Karen's cheeks went the color of a summer tomato. "I will be speaking to your chief. Tell him Lopez says hi." The officer replied with a smile. That night, I opened a folder that had been my career before Cedar Hollow templates for public records requests. A cheat sheet for building code. A flowchart for ADA complaints. And the big one, my fire code binder. I wasn't gonna swing it like a bat. I just wanted to know which wall to lean it on. I asked the management company for the architectural review minutes. They sent back a PDF with more black bars than words. "Proprietary," they said. I filed a request with the city for any permits pulled under the HOA's name. 0 in the past 12 months. Interesting. I asked the county if the HOA's security company had a license. Expired. The clerk said. "Ah. The thing about bullies is they multiply when they think you're alone." Within a week, 3 more families got citations for ramps, rails, and non-beige paint. A Vietnam vet named Walt knocked on my door one evening with a trembling letter in his hand. Hedge height violation. It said, "Dangerous nesting for undesirable wildlife." He chuckled. "Sad. I named those birds," he said. "Guess I'm housing criminals. Come inside." I told him, "Bring the letters." We formed a little kitchen table alliance, me, Walt, a nurse named Priya with a son on the spectrum, a couple with newborn twins and a stroller that didn't fit through their original steps, and Betty from 2 houses over, who swore she'd live long enough to outlast 3 Karens and a hurricane. We weren't revolutionaries. We were tired people with folders. We printed color copies of the covenants. We highlighted the sections that talked about reasonable accommodation. We drafted appeals and mailed them certified, because paper gets brave when you give it a tracking number. Priya baked lemon bars that could start treaties. Walt brought a pot of chili that tasted like the word stubborn smells. The board responded with a special meeting notice taped to our doors at dawn on a Saturday. Emergency agenda adjudication of standing violations impacting community aesthetics. Adjudication. Like we were defendants in the marble court of beige. We showed up early. Karen sat at the center of a long folding table, flanked by subcommittee chairs with matching water bottles. A projector screen glowed with a slideshow titled Harmony Through Consistency. Slide 1 was my ramp. Slide 2 was Walt's hedge. Slide 3 was Priya's sensory swing. Karen cleared her throat. Friends, we'll proceed efficiently. Each homeowner will have 2 minutes to speak. Make it 5, I said from the back. Or we'll be here all night with you pretending to be a judge. A murmur. The vendor liaison lifted his chin. 2 minutes is generous. 5, Betty said. Sweet as pie. Or, we'll use your 2. Karen tapped her pen, calculating whether to fight or pretend she'd intended 5 all along. Fine, she said. 5. Walt went first. Because elders go first, and because he wanted to. He didn't bring diagrams. He brought a photograph of his late wife, Ellie, kneeling by the hedge in a straw hat. She planted it when our boy shipped out. He said, when the birds came back every spring. She said it meant hope came back. 2. He didn't cry. I did. A little. Karen shuffled papers like shuffling could erase a life. Priya went next. My son loops when he's overwhelmed, she said. That swing keeps him from melting down and keeps your picnic from becoming a disaster. You want aesthetics. How about a kid not sobbing in a parking lot? When it was my turn, I rolled a projector cart to the middle like an old substitute teacher. The first slide wasn't my ramp. It was a photo of the community pool gate chained with a shiny new padlock. Who installed this? I asked. Temporary closure, Karen said. We had a vandalism incident. Cool, I said. You just created a single point of failure. If a child slips, that lock is the difference between panic and tragedy. I clicked to the next slide, a map with fire access lanes highlighted in red. A big red X sat on a turn where, 3 weeks earlier, the HOA had planted decorative boulders. Who approved these safety rocks, blocking apparatus? Clearance. A couple of the board members shifted in their metal chairs. The vendor liaison coughed. Look, I said, I'm not here to flex credentials. But there's a reason I get twitchy about egress. Families die in pretty neighborhoods when people who love order forget what chaos looks like. Something cracked in the room then. It wasn't a cheer. It was the sound of folks deciding to not be quiet. Karen bristled. Jack, this is about a yellow ramp, not fire theory. Accessibility is a life safety issue. I said, same category, different slope, regardless. She snapped. The color, paint is paint. Karen. Betty cut in. You can paint a fence, not a person's legs. Karen's composure finally slid off its hanger. If we let this slide, we'll be overrun with non-compliance, she said, reaching for a word that wouldn't get her quoted on a bad Facebook page. There's people who move here for standards. There's people who move here to live, I said. Then came the part no one planned. The storm. A hard summer thunderhead rolled in and snapped the lights like a stage trick. The room went dim. Someone opened the side doors to let in air and the smell of wet asphalt. A squall ripped across the green. From the open doors, I could see the pool fence shake. The chain that never should have been there, clattering like a warning. "Kids!" someone shouted. "The kids are at the pavilion," I ran. Old habits overrode new addresses. Walt was right behind me. Cane and all. Swearing like a sailor. Betty corralled little ones under the eaves with the authority of a retired school principal who's seen 100 field trips go sideways. August tore the pavilion banner free and tried to fly it like a kite. Lightning cracked. The kind that makes your teeth feel it. A toddler darted toward the slick concrete by the pool. His mom slipped. Hard. Grabbing for him. I hit the gate and found the chain wrapped twice around the post with a lock you could anchor a boat with. "Keys!" I shouted. "Maintenance has them." Someone yelled back. He went home. I took one look at the hinge bolts. Grabbed the nearest metal chair. And sorry turned that lock into a paperweight. The gate gave with a scream. I scooped the kid. Handed him to his mom. And didn't bother with the part where you ask permission before you do the right thing. When the power flickered back, the room's temperature had changed. Not because the storm cooled it, but because fear pried open people's opinions. Karen stood in the doorway. Rain misting her perfect hair. Watching the gate swing like a lesson. No one applauded. It wasn't that kind of moment. It was quieter. People looked at the ramp guy and saw something else, someone who knows the difference between ugly and unsafe. The meeting resumed in a room that was done pretending. A motion was made by the beige sweater. Of all people, to suspend all fines tied to accessibility modifications, pending an outside review. It passed with a chorus of ayes so fast Karen barely found her nay. She tried to pivot. "We still need to address color compliance," she said. Later, the vendor liaison whispered. Eyes on the pool. He seemed smaller suddenly. Like a man who just watched liability walk by, wearing a wet diaper. That night, Mia sat up in bed under fairy lights and asked, "Are we safe here?" I told her the truth. "We're safer today than yesterday." She nodded, then smirked. "I still want stars on the ramp." "Done," I said. "Cosmic. Even." We painted them the next afternoon, little constellations, waltzing across sunrise yellow. Neighbors stopped to watch. Priya's son placed stickers carefully between our brushstrokes. Walt told stories about Ellie's bird hedge and taught Mia to whistle like a cardinal. Betty brought lemonade, sharp as justice. Karen drove by twice. The second time, she didn't slow down. I wish that was the end. It wasn't. People like Karen don't retreat, they regroup. The following week, I received a certified letter with language so crisp it might have been ironed. Failure to comply will result in lien proceedings. Lien. Over paint. Over stars. I took a walk to cool the lava rising in my throat. A hawk circled. Somewhere. A lawn cruise blower buzzed like a dentist drill. When my pulse settled, I did what I do best, paperwork. I filed an ADA complaint. I filed a fair housing complaint. I filed a report about the expired security license. I sent the fire marshal, my old partner, a friendly tip about locked gates and decorative boulders. I printed copies for our little kitchen table alliance. "We're not burning down the house," I said. "We're opening windows." Word got around. A young couple on Maple wrote that Karen had strongly encouraged them to remove a front yard little free library because book clutter attracts the wrong element. An older man admitted he'd been fined for hanging a flag on Tuesdays that didn't match the approved schedule. Tuesday. For heaven's sake. Priya found old minutes where the vendor liaison awarded a seasonal maintenance contract to a company his brother owned. It wasn't a smoking gun. It was a bonfire with paperwork s'mores. When the state investigator called, her voice was frank. Sanitary. The precise opposite of Karen's sugary knife. We've received multiple. Oh, find. The openly designed. Aligned complaints, she said. We'll be in touch with your HOA directly. I didn't smile. Not yet. But I let myself imagine a world where standards meant safety first. The lien hearing was scheduled for a Thursday evening in June. People showed up hungry for answers. For someone to say enough. For a world where your front door isn't a battlefield. The board tried to limit attendance. The board failed. I wore my one good shirt and told myself I'd let the facts talk. Mia squeezed my fingers and whispered, "Be kind if you can. Be loud if you have to." Which, yeah. That's the whole gig. Karen opened with an apology that wasn't. We regret any feelings of distress. She read. Like a flight attendant explaining turbulence. However, the integrity of our community requires adherence to established procedures. I clicked the little remote and put up slide 1, a screenshot of the ADA language simple. Unsexy. Stubborn as a stop sign. Slide 2, the fire code egress diagram. Slide 3, the security license status. Slide 4, the vendor registry showing the liaison's brother's company. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't need to. The shapes accused themselves. Here's the deal, I said. Voice steady. You can love power, or you can love your neighbors. Pick one. Someone in the back whispered. Amen. Someone else muttered. About time. Karen reached for the mic. Her hand shook. This is a smear campaign. She managed. This is the doors opened. In walked the state investigator. A woman with a canvas tote and a neutral blazer. She had that government calm that says, I have forms that bite. Good evening, she said. I'm here regarding the accessibility complaints. You could feel the room lean toward her like sunflowers. I sat down. Finally. Because sometimes the bravest thing you do is stop pushing and let the truth work. Karen tried to smile. It didn't climb her face. Mia tugged my sleeve and whispered. Dad. Yeah. Kiddo, can we keep it yellow forever? Forever's a long time. I said. But, yeah. We didn't win that night, not everything. Not all at once, but the blood stopped running the wrong way. The investigator asked questions. No one had ever asked Karen in public. Who approved the lock? Where are the minutes? How do you reconcile these fines with federal guidance? The vendor liaison discovered that shrugging in front of neighbors feels different than shrugging at a spreadsheet. As the room emptied, Walt patted the ramp with his palm like you pat a good dog. Looks like a sunrise after a long night, he said. It is. I told him. It really is. I wish this were the part where credits roll and Karen resigns with grace. But if she had grace, we wouldn't be here. What she did next made every petty thing before look like dress rehearsal. Because when people like Karen feel power slipping, they don't reach for humility. They reach for force. And early one morning, too early. Like they planned it that way. The sound of metal on wood. Boots. On steps. And a voice outside my bedroom window made my blood run cold. Compliance team. Someone barked. Open up. They came at daybreak. The color of the sky, somewhere between dishwater and threat. Boots on the steps. A metal clatter. And a voice that had practiced sounding official in bathroom mirrors. Compliance team. Open up. I was halfway to the door when Mia called. Small and fierce. Dad, I got it, I said, already feeling the old pulse that used to wake up for fire alarms. I opened the door to three guys in matching polos, with a logo that wanted to be a badge when it grew up. Behind them idled the same private security SUV from before. Clipboards. Cargo shorts. Contractor energy. The tallest one had a bolt cutter like it was an extension of his arm. Morning, I said evenly. Lose a map to the part where you can't trespass. The tall one glanced down at his paper. Mr. Reynolds. PER board order. We're here to remove an unsafe structure and restore visual conformity. I looked past him at the ramp. Yellow. Stars we painted yesterday, catching the early light like winks. Nope, I said. You're here to make a federal problem on my porch. He tried the smile that works on people who doubt their own rights. Sir. Refusal will result in further fines. Buddy, I said. Touch that ramp, and you'll hear new words like injunctive relief. Also, those bolt cutters cut locks, not court orders. The driver shifted in the SUV. The engine coughed like it wanted to leave before it was implicated. The smallest polo kid, barely old enough to rent a car, said, We have authority from the Architectural Review Committee. Cool, I said. Show me a court stamp. Karen appeared on the sidewalk with a travel mug that matched her lipstick. No visor today. Just determination. Jack. Let's not escalate. You brought bolt cutters to a child's front door, I said. You escalated before coffee. Neighbors filtered onto porches. That quiet parade of robes and mugs and phones set to camera. Priya crossed the street in scrubs. Pen still tucked behind her ear. Walt shuffled over. Cane clicking like a metronome for righteous trouble. Betty, bless her, brought a lawn chair, like she didn't plan to move till Justice did. Remove it, Karen told the team. Soft and deadly. We have procedures. Ma'am, I said. Those men step on this porch, and they're trespassing. There's also a federal complaint pending. You want to add retaliation to the file? Mia rolled up beside me. Chin up. My stars are staying, she said. Her voice quivered. Mine did too. The tall guy glanced at the SUV. Then at Karen. Then at the crowd of phones. He was a rule follower with survival instincts. Let's call this in, he muttered into his radio, which probably talked to no one. Officer Lopez pulled up before the radio finished, pretending. She took in the bolt cutters, the clipboards, the faces. Morning, she said to Mia. First, like the stars. Thanks, Mia whispered. Lopez turned to the men. Whose idea is this board directive? The tall one said, shoulders dropping an inch with every syllable. Board can't order trespass on a lawful structure, she said calmly. Step off the property. Karen tried to interject. Lopez didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. President Halstead, if you want to test this, call your lawyer. But these men leave now. They left. Bolt cutters and all. The SUV rolled away like a dog that peed on the wrong rug. Karen stood there, stuck between fury and a smile for the neighborhood Facebook page. This isn't over, she said quietly. I know, I replied. That's the problem. She pivoted, heels clicking. And what? As she passed Betty, the old woman whispered, "Love, your mug. Looks like a stop sign." We breathed again. Priya hugged Mia. Walt patted my shoulder like a teammate after a long inning. Neighbors drifted back to kitchens, but left their sympathy like porch lights. "Dad," Mia said. Small. I was scared. "Me too," I said. But scared and right can stand in the same doorway. That afternoon, a community newsletter hit our inboxes, the kind of digital confetti that looks innocent till you read it. Maintaining harmony. The subject chirped. Inside, a paragraph about visual clutter. A cautionary tale about unauthorized structures. And an invitation to embrace our neutral palette. No names. Plenty of arrows. Betty marched over with a printed copy and a highlighter, the color of judgment. "They dissed your stars," she said, underlining neutral like it had personally offended her. "Neutral's a choice," I said. "It's not a virtue." "You gonna answer it?" she asked. "Not with a newsletter," I said. "With a vote." We'd whispered recall like it was taboo. But that night, we said it out loud around my kitchen table. Not a coup. Not chaos process. Priya pulled up the bylaws on her phone. Walt found the section on special meetings. I brewed coffee strong enough to revoke common sense. We needed signatures, petitions from a percentage of homeowners to force a vote. We needed proxies for folks who couldn't attend. We needed patience. Which, ain't my strongest muscle. We'll do it right, I said. No shortcuts. No ambushes. Also, no beige. Mia called from the living room, which felt like a mission statement. We set up what Betty called a porch forum, 3 card tables. A stack of forms. Markers. A plate of Priya's lemon bars. Walt's chili in a crock pot. And a sign that said, in my neatest block letters, "Neighbors before rules." People came like rain. Some brought stories. Some brought silence and a pen. A few brought fear and left with a signature anyway. One man lingered at the curb. Hands in pockets. He looked like he wanted to be invisible. "I work nights," he said, towing the sidewalk. "Got a violation for my porch light being too bright at dawn. They said it shocked the aesthetic." He laughed. Small. Then signed, like he was stealing back a piece of himself. A woman whispered that the board told her to take down a small shrine she set out for her mother. Too many candles. Too much grief on the lawn. It, helped me, she said. Eyes wet. They said it bothered people. Grief bothers people who want neat lines. Betty told her, hugging her like a granddaughter. "We will make a line for you by the end of the weekend." We had enough signatures to force a special meeting. We delivered the petition in a manila envelope that had lived in my desk longer than some friendships. Karen accepted it at her door with a smile you could skate on. "How participatory," she said. "We pride ourselves on civic engagement." "Me too," I said. "Especially the engaging part." A date was set. Flyers went up. A debate was scheduled, board versus neighbors. On the green. Under twinkle lights, if the power cooperated. We planned to bring facts and lemonade. Karen planned to bring procedure and, probably, macarons. 2 days before the debate, a city code enforcement truck rolled down Willow Street. Not police. Not HOA. Actual municipal workers who answer to a charter and sleep at night. A woman in a safety vest hopped out, clipboard in hand. She walked the pool fence, frowned at the scar from the bolt cutter. jotted notes. She measured the decorative boulders at the fire lane and wrote more. She took photos of the security vehicle parking in front of a hydrant. I wandered over. Introduced myself. Jack. I said. This is, my favorite clipboard I've seen all month. She smiled. Saw your ADA complaint cross with our pool inspection calendar, she said. Figured I'd take a look while I was in the neighborhood. You'll want to talk to the board. I said. Oh. I will, she said. And also to the fire department. And the licensing office. There's layers. Like a lasagna of nonsense. Karen intercepted her near the clubhouse. Voice saccharine. The inspector nodded politely and kept writing. When Karen gestured at my house like a problem, the inspector pointed her pen at the lock mark on the gate. I could not hear the words, but I recognized the choreography of someone not being believed for the first time in a while. That evening, the board sent a system-wide email. Temporary closure of community pool and pavilion for safety assessment. Translation: the inspector was not impressed. The email blamed recent storm events healthier than blaming a guy with a conscience. The debate night came warm and humming. That kind of suburban summer evening where kids turn into fireflies and lawn chairs multiply. The board sat behind a collapsible table with a white cloth and a bowl of wrapped mints. Like dental hygienists who moonlight as mayors. We sat in a circle. No table. Just coolers and a wireless mic. Someone's cousin loaned us from a church basement. Karen opened with a speech that would have killed at a country club breakfast. Words like integrity, legacy, and our shared vision. She was good at this. I'll give her that. Some folks nodded, because they'd always nodded. Habit is a heavy coat. When it was our turn, I didn't do the slideshow. Not this time. I told a story. My first week as a fire inspector. I said. I found a comedy club with the exit door chained. Owner said it was to keep folks from slipping out without paying. I told him it could keep folks from slipping out while breathing. He said, "We've never had a fire." I said, "There's a first time for everything." We cut the chain. I pointed to the ramp. "This is an exit door for my kid. We're not chaining it for anyone's comfort." Priya talked about her son. About how the swing was the difference between a meltdown and a picnic. Walt talked about Ellie and the hedge. And you could feel the whole green lean toward him, like he was the last radio tower during a storm. Betty just raised her lemon bar and said, "These are the only bars I like around here." And the whole crowd laughed. A relief valve, hissing open. Questions flew. What about property values, Priya? People value being decent. What about uniformity, Betty? We're not socks. What about rules? Me, rules exist, so we can live together. The moment they make life smaller. Not safer. They're just fences painted pretty. Then a man I didn't recognize stepped forward. Hat in his hands. I did some digging, he said. Public records. There's contracts awarded by the board to a company run by the vendor liaison's brother. He shrugged at Karen. Looks like it. Anyway, maybe there's explanations. He wasn't accusing. He was inviting the board to tell a better story. They didn't. The vendor liaison stared at his shoes like they might sprout wings. Karen regrouped. She always did. "We are volunteers," she said. "We sacrifice so much to keep this place pristine." Betty stood. "Honey," she said gently. "Pristine ain't a synonym for kind. The vote came a week later under fluorescent lights in the elementary school gym. Because gyms are the only rooms big enough for this kind of civic heat. Ballots on clipboards. Names checked against lists. Proxies handed over like wrapped gifts. Mia watched from the bleachers with Priya's boy. 2 kids, trading stickers like diplomats. Karen worked the room with that campaign smile. We worked the tables with pens and answers. A man whispered to me that he didn't want drama. I said, "Here's a crazy idea. Maybe kindness is less dramatic than fines." He chuckled, then marked his ballot. When the counting started, the gym had the hush of a church during a confession. Volunteers, one from each side, which I hated but accepted, tallied at the center table. Every so often, a number was read out and recorded on the whiteboard. The rows moved like a slow tide. It wasn't a landslide. It never is in places where people mow on Saturdays and wave while they do it. But it was enough. The board lost the vote barely. Courage, scraping past caution by the width of a paint swatch. A recall. An election to fill the seats. Karen went very still. A porcelain doll on a shelf where someone forgot to dust. Then she spoke. Voice, even. Eyes, glass. "I hope you all enjoy the chaos you've invited," she said. "I have only ever served. Then rest," Betty said softly. I didn't cheer. I didn't gloat. I walked to Karen. Stuck out my hand. "You love order," I said. "Help us transition clean." She stared at my hand like it was a dare. Then, very carefully, she shook it. "Don't ruin this place," she whispered. "Help me not," I said. We had a month before the new board seated. A month to prove we weren't just a mood. We formed committees that weren't cynical jokes, access and safety. Transparency. Welcome. And belonging. Priya took access. Walt took insisted on the new grounds group. Betty took hospitality because, of course she did. I got safety. Sina, profit. Which felt less like a job and more like the long version of what I already do when I can't sleep. We hosted a workday. Not the performative kind with selfies and matching shirts. The grimy kind. We moved the decorative boulders off the fire lane and into a little rock garden where they could be pretty without being lethal. We replaced the chain on the pool with a panic bar and a sign that said, "This opens for life safety. Please, keep closed." We planted native shrubs to soften sightlines for the folks who worry about angles. We built a little book box by the playground, out of leftover fence boards. Kids filled it with dog-eared dragons and mysteries before the varnish dried. Karen didn't show. I didn't expect her to. But a neat stack of bottled water appeared at the pavilion with a note taped to it. Hydrate. KH. The hard things sometimes soften at the edges. If you let them. Or if you paint them yellow and put stars on them till they can't help it. The night before the new board met, Mia and I sat on the porch. Feet up on the rail. Cicadas pushing the soundtrack of July. "Are we done?" she asked. "Never," I said. "But we're home." "Do we have to repaint the ramp?" she asked. Mischief flickering. "Like ever, only if the constellations get jealous," I said. "We'll add more." She yawned. "You ever, still don't like Karen?" "You don't have to," I said. "Just don't become her." The first meeting of the new board was crowded and weird in the way first days always are. Folks who'd never used microphones used microphones. People who'd never been heard practiced their voices in public. We passed a resolution placing accessibility above aesthetics. We instituted a transparency rule, Contracts above a certain amount must be posted. Competitive bids required. No relatives from the same household. We set up an ombuds desk where grievances could come without being punished for showing up. And we invited Karen. She came. Surprisingly, sat in the second row in a cardigan, the color of dusk. When it was time for public comment, she stood, spine straight. I started volunteering because I hate mess. She said, I still do. But maybe I confused mess with life. You all made your point loudly. She glanced at Mia. Some of it was quite loud. A couple chuckles. She swallowed. I will serve on one committee. If you'll have me, that one. She pointed to the new welcome and belonging sign like it had offended her, and she decided to forgive it. Deal, Betty said. Immediate. The room did that thing it does when something shifts. Not a cheer. A settling. We weren't saints. We still had arguments about fence heights and porch colors and whether Halloween skeletons should be allowed past Thanksgiving. They should. Let the bones be merry. But the tone changed. A rule book is a weapon in the wrong hands. In the right ones, it's a cookbook. You still need fire and neighbors to make dinner. Late that summer, we held a block party that wasn't a weapon. No speeches. No debates. Just grilled corn. Walt's storytelling. Priya's son teaching Mia a knock-knock joke, so silly she told it to everyone twice. A band from the high school played everything slightly off-key and utterly perfect. Karen manned the name tag table with the discipline of a general organizing a retreat. Every tag had a star sticker. Why stars? I asked her. Unable to resist. She rolled her eyes at herself. Because the yellow paint won, she said. Might as well coordinate. Truce? I asked. Armistice, she said. We'll revisit after the monthly meeting. We both laugh. And if you told me in spring we'd laugh together, I'd have checked your pulse. That night, after the last folding chair clapped shut and the trash bags sagged like full moons, Mia wheeled to the edge of the ramp and looked at the sky. Dad, she said, do stars get fines for being too bright? Only if Karen's in charge of the Milky Way. I said, and she's been term limited. She giggled. Then, sobered. Do you think other people in other neighborhoods have to fight like this? Yeah, I said. All over. Some lose. Some win. Most just get tired. She nodded. We should. Help them. Now you're talking. So, I started writing it down. Not because I wanted to be a hero, but because stories pull people together the way chains pull gates shut. If you're listening, and your porch feels smaller than your life, and your stars feel like crimes, hear this. Please, you ain't alone. There's people who will bring lemon bars and pens and bolt cutters for the locks that should never have been there. I wish I could say Karen never sent another letter that made my eyebrows attempt flight. She did. Old habits are sticky like that. But every time, the community stood a little faster and a little closer. It turns out the cure for pettiness is a neighborhood that remembers names. Months later, on a morning, as cool and clean as a new page, a package arrived with no return address. Inside a paintbrush with a yellow ribbon and a note in handwriting that looked very much like a second-grade teacher's. For your next constellation. It read, a reformed aesthetic. Mia taped it above her desk like a trophy. We painted Orion next. Then the Pleiades. We left room for the future. And if you're wondering whether the board ever apologized for starting a lien over a ramp, here's the truth. Some people can't say sorry with their mouths. They say it with policy changes. With bottled water at work days. with a star sticker on a name tag. We took the apology, in the currency it came, and asked for better interest next time. We never called the ramp again. We called it the front door. That's what it had been from the start. But hey, there's one more turn in this story. Because power's shadow is long. And sometimes, it bends around corners when you think you're in the clear. A letter arrived from the management company we'd inherited like a bad sofa stiff. Expensive. Wrong for the room. Notice of termination. It said, effective end of the year. No reason given. A rumor fluttered that Karen's cousin had friends at the firm. That there were ego bruises that wanted retribution. Might be true. Might be boring. Either way. It meant we had to choose who we wanted to be when the adult supervision stormed off. We could panic. Or we could do what we'd learned to do, slow down. Read the fine print. And make a thing together. We put out a call for proposals. We asked for references. Not brochures. We asked what firms did when a board chose people over paint. We asked whether they'd ever met a kid who needed a ramp. We interviewed 3 companies in the clubhouse, where the pool fence now swung open in all the ways that mattered. We picked the team that brought coffee for volunteers. Not cookies for board members. The team that said fair more than fine. The team that didn't flinch at the star stickers. Why'd you pick us? The new manager asked. Because you asked where the fire lanes are. I said. Maybe that's the whole lesson. The thing I wish I'd known before the first yellow brushstroke. Ask where the exits are before you lock something pretty. You reading this. In a house where the lungs of the street feel tight, ask. Ask loud. Ask together. Paint anyway. We'll send you a brush. A week after the new manager signed on. An envelope slid under my door with the precision of a paper guillotine. Proposed Covenant Amendment Architectural Purity. The title announced. Like a perfume that smells like rules. It promised clarity and consistent sightlines. And tucked deep in paragraph 7 was the landmine. Any assistive device visible from the street required discretionary prior approval and seasonal concealment, where feasible. Seasonal concealment. Like bodies in winter, Dad. Mia said, peering at the print. Does seasonal mean me? It means somebody scared of needing what you need. I said, trying to keep my voice from breaking. And they wrote it down. We called an emergency roundtable in my living room. Sarah. The new manager, sensible shoes. Binder like a puzzle box, flipped pages with calm fingers. They're attempting a mail-in vote, she said, tapping the clause that let old boards pass the buck through postage. Quorum, by envelope. Low turnout. High impact. Who's they now? Walt asked. Eyebrow up. An outside law firm advising a group of homeowners. Sarah said carefully. The same firm that writes those purity templates for other associations. She exhaled. I've seen this move before. Can we stop it? Priya asked. Arms crossed. Voice steady. Eyes on her boy, stacking coasters like skyscrapers. We can slow it. Sarah said. We can shine so much light, it's not worth the shadows. Betty slid a plate of cookies onto the coffee table, like an offering to the gods of patience. Then let's plug in every lamp, she said. And if that don't work, we'll open the blinds. We drafted a plain English brief and mailed it to every doorstep, what this amendment really does. No jargon. Just stories. A ramp isn't a lawn ornament. A swing is not a crime. A porch rail is not a rebellion. We included a photo of Mia's stars. Walt's hedge. Priya's swing. We asked people to show up like their own front doors depended on it, because they do. The next morning, An anonymous Facebook group bloomed like mold after rain. Keep Cedar Hollow beautiful. The header was a stock photo of a flawless picket fence nobody owned. Posts flowed soft jabs, wrapped in politeness. Is yellow too? Stimulating. Shouldn't we protect buyers from surprises, dog whistle stuff? The kind that lets a person be mean without hearing themselves do it. Some comments were just plain cruel. With spelling like a broken gate. There's people who move here 'cause it's classy. Don't drag us down. I typed. Deleted. Typed. Deleted. Then I remembered Mia's knock-knock joke and laughed once. Just enough to keep my fingers from starting a war they couldn't finish. Facts at the forum. I posted. Come talk to humans. Not avatars. 2 nights later, someone painted a streak of beige across the middle of the ramp. A silent act. Coward colors. They missed the stars. Like guilt decided to be careful. When I opened the door at dawn, the stripe sat there. Still tacky. A bandage on the wrong wound. Mia saw it and went very quiet. Then she said, "They're bad at painting." I cleaned that stripe with a putty knife and a prayer while the neighborhood woke. By noon, people came. One by one. With brushes. Somebody brought a gallon of sunshine yellow. Somebody else brought glitter that we didn't use but definitely considered. We called it a repair. Not a vigil. But tell my heart, it wasn't both. The kid who'd been fined for a porch light swiped stars like comets into the drying paint. Priya's boy hummed a little spaceship tune that made the work feel easy. Karen walked by once. Sunglasses, big as apologies. She stopped halfway, took in the crowd, and kept walking. Progress is messy. And I mean, so are sunglasses. The forum on the green was a proper town square folding chairs. A coil of extension cord. A microphone that squealed like a teenager. Kids weaving between knees with popsicles. 2 dogs under a bench sharing community crumbs. Sarah moderated with a voice like seatbelt steady and there when you need it. On one side of the tent, us. With our stories and our binder tabs. On the other, a neat row of folks in polos who'd never met a caveat they didn't adopt. With them sat a man in a suit so crisp it could cut paper. He introduced himself as counsel from the firm that had birthed architectural purity. His tie was polite, his smile was a closing argument. We respect everyone's feelings. He began. But aesthetics protect equity. If we allow ad hoc modifications, we invite blight. Blight, Walt muttered. My hedge predates your tie. The attorney lifted a palm. A ramp today. A patchwork of non-conforming structures tomorrow. Property values respond. Property values respond to decency. 2. Priya said. Ask any buyer with a kid. He leaned on the phrase, rules are rules. Like repetition creates righteousness. He mentioned superlean rights with the casual tone of a person dropping a fork at dinner. And when murmur turned to rumble, he held the mic like a gavel. Associations have strong remedies. I asked for the mic and held it loose. Remedies treat disease. I said, you're describing punishment. We went back and forth quiet. Stubborn. Like 2 hands trying to move a boulder in opposite directions. He had precedent, I had people. He had covenants, I had a child's stars. In another universe, it was a stalemate. Then someone said, does anyone else smell gas? Heads turned toward the clubhouse. That faint rotten egg tang quickened into certainty. Then into the kind of silence that means, Folks, remember news stories they tried to forget. The attorney's mouth formed a perfect little O of inconvenience. Sarah's eyes locked on mine. I was already moving. Kill the power, I said. Clear the building. We flipped the main and propped the doors. People stepped back. Calm the way a herd gets when a storm has a shape. I followed the smell like a breadcrumb trail to the utility closet near the kitchen. New water heater. Installed yesterday, if the tape on the box told the truth. Vent pipe, capped by a decorative lattice someone thought was cute. I didn't touch a thing but air. Call the gas company, I said over my shoulder. Too loud. The old command voice taking over. Nobody light anything. The attorney at the tent looked annoyed, as though safety had interrupted his syllables. Karen, who had hovered at the edge like a shadow denying itself, pressed a handkerchief to her nose and watched the crowd do something she hadn't expected. Listen to someone who wasn't her. The gas company rolled up with practiced urgency. The tech, a woman with a braid and boots that meant business, whistled low at the lattice and shook her head. That's a no-no, she said. Technical as poetry. She vented the line, tagged the heater, and wrote a citation that carried the kind of weight our fines never would. Lucky catch, she added. Eyes, kind. The crowd exhaled. The attorney checked his watch, and the purity amendment lost its moment. You can't sell sightline consistency 5 minutes after everybody pictured the pavilion roof in the trees. We reconvened, because life does. And the vote to table the amendment wasn't close. Even the folks who love a rule felt the edge of a different kind of line, one between pretty and safe. We agreed to draft clarity that protects access as a value, not a carve-out. We agreed to require licensed contractors for anything that hisses. We agreed to stop pretending seasonal applies to legs. The suit packed his briefcase like a man whose weekend had been mugged by common sense. We'll revisit after the monthly meeting, he said. And for once, the line was actually funny. People laughed. Karen almost did. A month later, the state investigator's report arrived. Not a thunderbolt, more like a ledger with feelings. The association, it read, has, on multiple occasions, created barriers to access that may violate fair housing guidance. No giant fines, just required training, policy rewrites, and a note that future complaints would be viewed in light of this pattern. Translation, Betty asked, squinting at the bureaucraties. They told us to grow up, I said. With a paper trail. We scheduled the training and held it in the gym where we'd unseated a queen. A facilitator with kind eyes and a voice like a favorite aunt led us through scenarios. A vet with a service animal. A teen with sensory needs. A grandmother who can't manage steps on her best day. When the facilitator asked for volunteers to role-play, Mia rolled forward. Small and incandescent. Excuse me, she said, performing shyness as a choice, not an apology. My life won't fit in your rule. The room laughed, then got quiet. Even Karen watched like she'd opened a window she didn't know was there. During a break, I found Karen by the coffee urn, stirring sugar with the intensity of a person trying to dissolve old habits. How's your committee? I asked. She set down the stirrer. I am learning names, she said. Apparently people are more complicated than palette charts. You don't say. I grinned. She almost grinned back. Jack, do you ever feel like the neighborhood's a piano and you never learned more than one key? She exhaled. I played no for so long, I forgot there were other notes. Try welcome, I said. Lot of songs start there. We were getting somewhere awkward. Human. Useful. Which is exactly when the next shoe dropped. A certified letter. Crisp as iced water. Notice of intent to levy. Special assessment. The line items read like a list curated by my worst enemy's accountant, Legal Defense Fund. Compliance audit. Community rebranding. Rebranding. Like we were a cereal. The kicker, they tied it to the old board's contractual obligations. A last-minute retainer, inked with the purity firm before the recall. Backdated, like a bad alibi. The retainer locked the association into monthly fees unless terminated by, get this, a supermajority at a special meeting held on a Tuesday with a thunderstorm on the forecast. Can they do that? Priya asked. Jaw clenched. They did. Sarah said. We can do it. But it's work. We like work, Walt said, cracking his knuckles like a cartoon. We also like Tuesdays. We announced an open audit. Transparency like sun on alga. We posted every contract, redactions gone. Numbers bold. We invited 3 firms to bid openly on legal services. 1 fancy. 1 scrappy. 1 local with a lawyer who wore boots and said y'all like punctuation. We canceled the purity retainer by the book. Not by the gut. And we did it in public, so the person who tried to hide it had to watch sunlight be free. We still needed the supermajority. The room felt like math. We called neighbors who never come. We brought folding chairs to doorsteps for folks who don't do gyms. We asked the church to loan us their bus for seniors who gave up driving but not opinions. We promised childcare in the corner, with crayons and snacks, and a Pixar movie buried somewhere in an old DVD case. Tuesday came wet and loud. Rain on the roof like applause for the future. People filed in. Slickers squeaking. Umbrellas shaking off in patience. Karen stood near the welcome table, writing name tags like a penance. Every one got a star. The vote was closer than comfort, but wide enough for breathing. We hit the number. The retainer died. Rebranding plans were replaced by something less shiny and more true. A statement of values that fit on a postcard and didn't mention pallets. We keep each other. It read. And very Doc. That's the brand. The purity firm sent a stern letter. We sent a warmer one. Thank you. But no. They hinted at litigation. Our new lawyer boots. Y'all. Spine wrote back 3 pages of quiet thunder and cited cases that made no sound like a lullaby a judge would hum. The firm drifted away to sell sightlines to someone else who hadn't learned to say hello yet. Peace. Right, a kind of it. Enough to hear the crickets again. Then Halloween came. Because life loves a costume. The skeleton fight broke out by accident and turned into a parable. Someone put a tall skeleton on their porch in a cape and top hat. And the HOA group chat, bless its tender nerves, lit up. Too macabre. Property values. Children. We could have laughed it off. But the skeleton was standing on new railings built for a granddad who just moved in after a fall. Some folks don't separate symbol from scaffolding. Karen. To her credit. Posted. Let the bones be merry till Thanksgiving. And just like that, the argument dissolved into a parade. On the last night of October, the cul-de-sac became a song. Kids in costumes knocked on doors that once felt shut. Priya's boy went as a traffic cone, because he loves order in the sweetest way. And we let him direct foot traffic around the ramp like a tiny safety czar. Mia rolled as a comet in a star cape. glitter in her hair, because Rules had been asked to sit in the back seat for one blessed evening. I was handing out candy when the streetlights blinked twice and quit. A transformer up the road. Probably. The rain had been busy. The dark settled, soft and sudden. And for a beat, you could hear nothing but the kind of quiet that remembers. Then, glow sticks popped. Phones lit. Flashlights snapped on, like fireflies had taken an oath. No panic. Just neighbors making light. Someone shouted. Generator. The clubhouse had one. Installed after the storm that taught us about chains. I jogged over with a couple dads. Hearts pumping, like we'd been training all year for this. We opened the panel and found a fresh padlock. Not installed by us. Not installed by anyone who had to face a child without light. Sarah the first. Called. She was already there. We never approved a lock. The key box was empty. I put my hand on the lock and counted to 5 like I used to when I wanted to not be the guy who breaks things. Tools, I said. Karen appeared at my elbow with a ring of keys that looks like a jailer's dream. Try mine, she said. Breathless. Thank you, I said. And a weird thing happened. The third key worked. The generator coughed. Then purred. And the pavilion lights came back. Soft and warm. Someone cheered. Somebody else yelled. Candy resumes. We stood there a second, me, Sarah, Karen. 3 people who'd been 3 different kinds of wrong and right in the same year. Listening to kids laugh in powered light. The padlock, I asked. Vendor mistake. Sarah said. Meaning, add it to the never again list. We'll change the policy in the morning. We'll change it now, Karen said, taking the lock and dropping it in the trash with a thunk that sounded like repentance. We walked back. Slow. Jack, Karen said after a bit. I'm not your villain anymore. I know, I said. But I didn't need a villain. I needed a neighbor. Working on it, she said. And in the dark, her smile wasn't porcelain. It was the small, ordinary kind you can only see from very close. November slid in with air that tasted like apples and future. The Access and Safety Committee finished the neighborhood evacuation plan routes printed on magnets. A phone tree that doesn't assume everyone does apps. A map that shows where the folks with oxygen tanks live, so we check on them first. We had drills that were half serious, half block party. Kids ran them like games, and then, corrected our timing with whistle blast precision. We fed them cider as payment. The day we stuck the magnets on fridges, Mia wheeled back, squinted at the map, and said, Dad, you made the neighborhood into a fire station. Kind of, I said, only with better cookies. The state sent a second letter. This one, lighter, compliance actions satisfactory. The inspector who'd found the gas vent came back for coffee and a tour like a proud aunt. She admired the panic bar, the moved boulders, the new sign at the pool that read, Opens easily in emergencies. Thank you for keeping it closed the rest of the time. She high-fived Mia and took a lemon bar to go. Trouble didn't disappear. It got smaller. And when it showed up, it wore a name tag like everyone else. A guy still complained about a neighbor's boat. A lady still wanted to ban flamingos. Which is a position. And I respect her gumption, even if I bought 2 plastic flamingos out of spite and named them Frank and Louise. But the big gear's access, safety, belonging clicked into something like a rhythm. Around Thanksgiving, I caught Walt staring at his hedge. hands deep in his jacket pockets. "Thinking of Ellie?" I asked. "Always," he said. "But today I'm thinking of spring. Because the birds," I said. "Because the birds," he nodded. "And because you painted a door yellow and the whole street changed its mind." I almost cried. I blame the cold. December arrived, wearing twinkle lights and opinions. The welcome committee asked for donations for families who'd had a rough year. Karen organized the list with military precision and genuine softness. She labeled everything. I mean everything. Label the labeler. Betty snorted. "Which? Fair." One night, a minivan I didn't recognize paused at the end of the block. Engine idling, like a question. A man got out, walked up to the ramp, and touched the stars with 2 fingers. "We saw it on the group," he said, meaning the version of Facebook that had gotten tender. "We're thinking about moving. My wife uses a chair sometimes." "You got space for us, we do," I said, like I was handing him a blanket. "We absolutely do." Christmas lights went up. Someone synchronized theirs to a playlist that Mia found both magical. After the 3rd loop, a test of patience. The skeleton wore a scarf and stayed sorry past New Year's. We let him. The purity crowd had either learned to laugh or learned to log off before they typed. Both are underrated skills. January dragged like it always does. Then, on a clear, cold night when the stars cut sharp, Mia said, "I want to add one more constellation." "Which one?" I asked. She pointed to a blank slant near the top. "Neighbors," she said. "Like, a made-up one. People holding hands. We'll need a new brush." I said, "I got one." She grinned and held up the yellow ribbon brush from the package with no return address. "From the Reformed aesthetic," she said. Delight and mercy twined into a single grin. We painted in our coats. Breath fogging. Paint, doing that sticky winter thing. It does. Walt hummed. Priya's boy counted stars like math could bless them. Sarah held a flashlight and told us where we missed a spot. Karen stood at the bottom of the ramp, arms folded against the cold, eyes softer than any code book. "Looks like a sunrise after midnight," she said. "It is," I told her. "It really is. You think that's the last chapter? It ain't. There's a thing about neighborhoods, just when you learn the rhythm. Some new instrument shows up and starts playing loud. Sometimes it's a drum you needed. Sometimes it's a trumpet you wish would practice further away. This time, it was a developer with glossy brochures and a grin that said, 'I don't live here.' He slated a vision session about the vacant lot at the edge of Cedar Hollow. Pocket homes. The flyer cooed. Curated density. He wanted a zoning change and our blessing. He said amenity uplift like he'd invented lemonade. I held the brochure like a hot potato. Pocket homes aren't bad by default. Density isn't the enemy. But people who don't say, neighbors don't get my yes, until they learn to. The last line of the flyer made my teeth itch. Management partnership opportunities available. Sarah read between those lines and found a cliff. The board voted to host a listening session. Not a rubber stamp. We invited the city planner, the fire marshal, the school principal who knows exactly how many kids is too many for a cafeteria omelet. We set a rule. Anyone who says aesthetic, without also saying safety, buys the room cookies. The developer arrived with renderings on foam boards and a vocabulary that taught me new ways to say luxury. He shook hands like a practiced politician. He was good. I'll give him that. Complimented our rebranding, we don't have one. Praised our vision, we barely nab. And asked if we'd consider updating our covenant tone to match market. 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 He had no idea he was talking to people who learned to say neighbor out loud. Sir, Walt said from the third row. Cane across his knees like a baton. Where's the fire lane on this? He tapped the rendering. Your cute pocket road looks like a choke point. The developer blinked. Then tried a smile. Our traffic consultant, shaped. Mia whispered to me. And I bit my grin in half. Priya raised her hand. What's your plan for accessible entries on these? The drawings show stoops like fashion, not function. Sarah slid a paper across the table. Her manager voiced a polite scalpel. We'll need guarantees and writing materials. Maintenance obligations. Impact fees. Also, your construction traffic plan cannot turn our streets into a quarry. Karen, who had chosen a chair at the middle like a student in the front row of a new class, leaned into the mic. Will your elevations include yellow? The room laughed. The developer didn't. We weren't hostile. We were not no. We were prove it. And when the conversation turned to partnership opportunities, he finally said the thing behind the thing. His firm liked to align governance with long-term outcomes. You mean you want a seat on the board? Betty said, like she was telling a teenager she'd seen their texts. He coughed. Advisory. Hard pass, I said, before my inside voice could tug the leash. We've done the puppet routine. We're going to try grown-up. The city planner took notes. The fire marshal asked good questions. The principal worried about drop-off lines. The developer promised to revise and return. We told him to bring a better plan and appetite for cookies. After. In the parking lot. Under a sky that looked like it contained every answer we hadn't asked yet. The fire marshal, the guy who'd been my partner back when I lived in a different kind of busy, clapped my shoulder. You turned this place into a small town, he said. Trying. I said. Trying hard. Keep the lanes clear, he said. Keep the doors open. Always, I said. And meant it more than I meant most things. We went home to our yellow ramp and our made-up constellation and the complicated symphony of a neighborhood learning to hear itself. If you're out there, listening with your lights off, because someone told you your stars were too loud, hey, turn 'em on. Put a chair out. Write a letter that smells like courage. You'll find others. We did. And just when I thought we'd earned a quiet chapter, a letter came I never expected to see. Not beige. Not bold. Thick paper. Blue ink. A signature that swirled like a fancy dessert. From Karen. Jack. It began. There is something I need to tell you. And I should have told you months ago. The letter was short enough to memorize and heavy enough to bend the day. Jack. There is something I need to tell you. And I should have told you months ago. I tried to make Cedar Hollow behave because my life wouldn't. That's not the apology. This is the backdated retainer. I greenlit it. I let the firm write it, and I signed. I thought I was protecting us from chaos. I was also protecting myself from being wrong. If you can meet, I'll bring everything. I owe the neighborhood a reckoning. Karen, I read it twice. Then once more with my jaw unclenched. Mia glanced up from her homework. Is it bad? It's honest, I said. And yeah, a little bad. We met at the clubhouse after dinner. The three of us, me, Sarah, and Karen, at the scarred table where half our arguments had started and died. Karen came with a banker's box and a face that was trying not to rehearse. She lifted out folders labeled with her tidy handwriting, retainer, vendor notes, complaints, personal, training. My son, I asked, softer than I meant to. She nodded, eyes shining. Evan. He died 2 summers ago. Epilepsy. I keep his folder because the world keeps moving, and she inhaled slowly. I joined the board to stop time from shifting under my feet. If I could just make the line straight, maybe the world would stop taking. Grief tilted the room. Sarah's hand found the edge of the box like a brace. I tried to say I'm sorry in a way that wasn't just air. Karen, I said, you were drowning, and you grabbed the rule book and hit people with it. She said, not letting herself off the hook. I know. She slid us copies of emails from the Purity firm, templates with empty blanks and full intentions. They pitched proactive governance. She said, they promised fewer headaches. They used that phrase, super lean, like a magic spell. I told myself it was just infrastructure. And the backdated signature, Sarah asked gently. Karen nodded. I thought I was plugging a leak. I was. Making a new one. We sat with it. The room hummed. The vending machine thunked. The ice maker sneezed, like small comic relief. Karen kept going. Like confession was the only bridge she had left. They offered a community rebrand. She said, added me. They had this whole package, new logo, new colors, of we're fresh, of our covenant language. They said buyers like clean rules. I said yes on too many things, because no kept the grief at bay. Turns out, it just kept people at bay. Sarah flipped a page. You didn't take money, she said, half asking, half stating. No, Karen said quickly, offended by the idea and relieved to swat it. Never. Just proximity, which is its own currency, and I spent it like it wouldn't cost anybody. I ran a thumb over the corner of Evan's folder and asked the only question that mattered for the next step. Do you want to tell them, I asked? Or do you want me to? Karen swallowed, then straightened. I want to tell them, she said. And for the first time since the day I met her, I believed she wanted to do something brave for someone other than her sense of control. We set a date for a town hall. Not to flog a person, but to clean a wound. Sarah drafted a notice that didn't sound like a subpoena or a pep rally. We invited Officer Lopez and the state investigator not for drama, but for ballast. We asked Walt to bring perspective and Betty to bring lemon bars. Because, well, you keep the rituals that keep you. The night of. The gym felt like a heart waiting to hear if it would be forgiven. Karen stood at the mic in a cardigan and flats. Hair imperfect on purpose. She held the pages, but didn't hide behind them. I made decisions I thought were adult. She began. Voice steady enough to borrow courage from. Some were fear in a blazer. I thought the world would be safer if it matched. I forgot people don't match. And that's the point. She told them about Evan without making him a prop. She told them about the retainer without making the firm a monster. She told them about the beige stripe someone painted on the ramp and how she sat in her car and watched the neighbors fix it and wished her hands had paint instead of paper. She said I'm sorry. Then said it again without the word if. You could feel the room go from arms crossed to arms uncrossed. Not all the way to clapping. This wasn't a TED Talk, but towards something like, okay. Now what? Now, what was a set of motions? Rescind the old retainer with a public resolution. Codify a ban on backdating and a requirement that contracts over a threshold have a 30-day cooling-off period. Commit that any covenant change affecting access requires an affirmative vote of an absolute majority. Not a trickle of mailers. They all passed. No one fainted. The world didn't end. The ceiling didn't fall. It turns out, adulthood is sometimes just a stack of boring protections for people you care about. After. In the parking lot, where truths go to decompress. Karen stood with me under a buzzing light. "Thank you," she said, which felt like too small a phrase for the courage it took to be disliked. "You did it," I said. "Not me. I ruined a few months." She said, "I don't want to ruin any more." "Then don't," I said. "Help me not ruin mine." She laughed, hiccuping, the way a person laughs when the tears haven't quite left the throat. Deal. We could have ended the season there, a clean arc. A tidy bow. Life had other plans. It sent fire. Not a tower of flame. Not a headline. A kitchen. Walt's kitchen on a windy Sunday just before dusk. Grease dancing on a burner and a phone ringing, and a story at the door distracting a man who tells the best stories. By the time the smoke alarm chatted up the ceiling, flames had found the cabinets. Walt grabbed the extinguisher, pulled the pin, squeezed, swept, just like the sticker says, then coughed, hard enough to make me stop typing this in retrospect and breathe shallow for a minute. "Priya called me. Smoke at Walt's," she said. Words tight. "He's out. I think. I'm at his hedge." I ran. The neighborhood did, too. Not the foolish way. Nobody barreled in with more bravery than sense. But the practiced way we'd planned for. Sarah hit the phone tree. Karen grabbed the go bag from the clubhouse with spare meds and blankets we never wanted to need. Officer Lopez happened to be on patrol. Lights cutting dusk like a needle through cloth. When I rounded the corner, smoke shouldered out the back door. Mean and gray. Walt stood at the curb, waving folks back with his cane like a conductor with only one beat. Out. 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 He looked embarrassed, more than scared. That's how good men are dumb sometimes. "Hydrant's clear," Sarah yelled, pointing to the bare curb we'd kept bare since the day we moved the boulders. The engine took the corner clean. Ladder scraping tree leaves and not much else. The hose lay straight as a line in a copybook. The crew moved like a song I remembered in my bones. "Anyone inside?" the captain barked. "No," Walt said. "Just my pride." They made black into steam. They made panic into after. And when the smoke thinned to a smell that would live in curtains for a month, but not in lungs forever, the captain nodded at me, like we'd passed an exam. Karen stood near Walt, one hand on his elbow, steadying both of them. Priya pressed a paper cup of water into his palm. Mia crossed the street with Betty, stared at the shimmer of the heat and said, "Dad's gonna be mad he forgot his fancy spatula." Which, okay, had us laughing when we probably needed to cry. The damage was there, but not forever. Cabinets gone. A section of wall blackened. Ceiling stained. The birds hadn't flown from the hedge. Walt whistled, and they answered. Because sometimes metaphors throw you a bone. We taped plastic. Made lists. Found a contractor who knows that like it was, is a sentence heavy with ghosts. That night, sitting on our porch, Mia leaned against my arm and whispered, "Would the old way have made the fire worse?" "Yes," I said. "Little bit." Locked gates. Blocked lanes. Panic. She nodded. So the yellow ramp and the open pool and the knot boulders, they're like spells. Like plans, I said. Which is the same thing. Just less glitter. She yawned. I like glitter. Noted. Walt's kitchen became a neighborhood project, the way sorrow becomes a casserole if you let people in. The contractor fixed what hammers fix. We fixed the rest meals. Rides. Company. Karen showed up with labels, of course, and stuck them on boxes like a benevolent librarian. Pots. Spices. Ellie's things. And on the smallest box. One I watched her carry to the truck like a baby. Hope. A week later. A postcard slid into every mailbox. Not an HOA. Notice just ink on cardstock and a stamp. The front, a photo of our yellow ramp with its stitched constellations. Sunlight on the paint. Shoe scuffs like signatures. The back 2 sentences. We keep each other. That's the brand. No logo. No board names. No sponsor. Someone had paid for it. Sure. But no one took credit. I stuck ours on the fridge beneath the magnet with the evacuation routes. Every time I grabbed milk, it whispered back at me, remember, spring came loud. Like it had waited politely in the wings all year and finally got to sing lead. The developer returned with new drawings that didn't insult us. The city planner smiled. The fire marshal didn't frown. The principal negotiated a crosswalk near the new pocket homes that made me want to put the man on a stamp. We agreed to a version that felt like growth, not a takeover. We asked for a percentage of units with no step entries and got it in writing. We asked for trees the size of mistakes and got saplings like promises. Which is fine if you plan to be around to water them. One Friday at dusk, as kids turned chalk into galaxies on the sidewalk, and a grill somewhere made the air misbehave in the best way, Karen walked up our ramp without asking. Like a neighbor. She carried a tin of something that smelled like cinnamon and confession. I made cinnamon rolls, she said. Like she'd invented peacemaking. Also, I put too much icing. There's people who like it that way. We are those people, Mia said, already rolling backward to retrieve plates. We ate on the porch. We watched a dog chase a tennis ball through a conversation. We listened to the last angry person on the Facebook group write a post about flamingos that would live on the internet till the sun cooled. Karen tilted her head and asked, "You ever think about running for city council?" "Jack, absolutely not," I said. Honest as weather. I like my wars small. She smiled. Me too, she said. I learned that the big wars are usually just a million small no's adding up. The night settled in. The stars came out like they had an RSVP. Mia looked up and down the sky, the ramp, and said, "We should add one more constellation." Which I asked. "Evan," she said. "A little one by the top. Not fancy. Just, there." Karen closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet and wider. "I'd like that," she said softly. "Very much." We painted it the next day. Careful and quick, before the weather changed its mind. A small, quiet pattern of dots near the place your hand grabs on a bad day. We didn't label it. We didn't need to. Right when I thought the story had learned to end instead of spiral, a letter came. Not beige or blue, but pink like a birth announcement. New homeowners orientation. It said, typed by the Welcome Committee. Chaired by Karen, yeah. That Karen, with sign-up sheets, for neighbor buddies. A tour that stopped at the pool gate and the book box and our ramp. And a promise of coffee that tastes like new chapters. Sarah added a slide to the orientation. Who we call when things go sideways. Not just emergency numbers. Names. Betty. Walt. Priya. Lopez. The new manager, whose business card says property manager, and whose job description is neighbor with clipboards. And, mine. I stopped calling it a ramp in my head. It was a map. We printed the map on the back of the orientation packet. We kept a stack by the clubhouse door. We tucked them into mailboxes with cinnamon rolls on a Sunday when we felt like making the world a little less lonely. The last loose thread was the Purity firm. They sent a final invoice with lines like strategy wrap-up and brand transition. Our lawyer sent back a check for the amount we legally owed less than their gravity, and a letter that said, with several footnotes and one very polite, bless your heart. We're done. Karen came over when the check cleared, stood at the bottom of the ramp, and said, you know that first day? When I said we'd revisit after the monthly meeting vividly. I said. She nodded at the stars. We've been revisiting ever since. In a good way. Keep revisiting. I said. That's the only way any of this works. She adjusted her cardigan. Like sincerity made her chilly. You gonna write this down? Jack. For people who think they're alone, I am mad. I said, gesturing at the notebook that has lived on our side table since the first letter arrived, like a paper knife. I keep trying to make it shorter. It keeps, not, good. She said, some roads need to be long. If you're still here, listening, if your HOA says your life is a violation, if someone with a clipboard thinks their fear should be your furniture, hear me, there's a porch light on in this story for you. There's people who will show up with pens and cookies and sorry maybe, bolt cutters for the locks that should never be in the first place. You ain't a problem. You're a neighbor. We were on the porch the night before the new folks moved into the pocket homes when the power lines hummed with summer and the air smelled like rain rehearsing. Mia leaned on me and asked, Dad, is this the end almost? I said, there's one more thing. Because there always is. And this one arrived not as a letter or a knock, but as sirens far off and a call I didn't want but knew would come. Jack Officer Lopez on the line. Wind in the background. We got a brush fire near the old trail. Evac route runs right behind the new pocket homes. We need your plan and your people. I stood. Karen, who'd stopped by to return a Tupperware and found herself in a plot twist, stood too. Mia looked at the sky and then at me. Brave as always. Go. She said, I'll pack the go bag. We went. The brush fire glowed on the ridge like a bad idea catching wind. Dry scrub. Gusts from the west. That crackle you feel in your teeth before you hear it. Sirens braided with night insects. The air tasted like pencil shavings and memory. Officer Lopez's voice came threaded through the radio the city loaned us after the storm. Activate your plan, she said. Wind's jumpy. We may need the pocket homes cleared fast. Copy. Sarah answered. Already flipping the laminated binder we called the Oh No manual. Her calm made other people brave. I jogged the path behind the new pocket homes and saw flame fingers testing the fence line along the old trail. Far but not far enough. The sky over the ridge pulsed orange. Then darker. Then orange again. Like a giant was breathing. Evac A is live. I told Sarah. Send the tree. On it, she said. Her thumbs flew. The phone tree pinged like rain on tin. Betty called the seniors. Priya messaged the parents' thread. Walt took the far end of Maple with his cane, like a baton tapping tempo bam. Bam. Knock. Tell. Move. Mia was already at the dining table. Go bag open. Packing. By Muscle Memory Meds. Charger. Flashlights. That tiny photo of her mom in a frame that looked like a son. I'll go to the clubhouse with Karen, she said. Chin up. Brave, swallowing fear like a vitamin. Sorry. The board needs someone at the name table. I smirked, even with my pulse in my ears. You're hired. We lit the school sign that says shelter here, and rolled up the new generator with the key that actually fit. The pavilion lights snapped on like you just needed to ask nicely. Karen unlocked the supply closet and pulled out the cots we'd bought with bake sale money and stubbornness. She set up the welcome table clipboards. Markers. Star stickers. Names first, she said. So no one gets lost between panic and paper. The first engines hit the corner hard and sure. The fire captain, new face. Good eyes waved with a gloved hand. We'll hold the line at the trail, he said. You keep the lanes open and your folks moving. Copy and copy. Sarah sent runners, actual human beings. Not just texts to knock the doors, where landlines still live and phones nap loud. Priya's boy put on his orange cone costume because, that's who he is. And pointed cars out of the cul-de-sac like a tiny lighthouse with feelings. He'd practiced this. We all had. At the pocket homes. A couple, just finishing a kitchen backsplash, dropped their trowels and loaded their sedan with a calm, you only fake if your insides are taped together by trust. Hey, the husband asked. Fire lanes. I pointed. He moved. We didn't need to explain the sign because we wrote it. Walt reached my elbow. Breathing hard but steady. Got the Parkers, he said. Got the twins in their diaper mountain. The birds are mad at the smoke. Birds can be mad, I said. People get to be breathing. We staged folks at the clubhouse. Karen checked names and handed out little star stickers like a soft oath you're on the list. You're seen. The new manager. Sarah ran the logistics, like a conductor whose orchestra is 100 neighbors and a stack of folding chairs. Betty brewed coffee that tasted like courage and handed out lemon bars that tasted like home, and I think those bars might be part of why no one cried until later. Out at the line. The wind lied twice and told the truth once. Fire wants to move the way water wants to pool, wherever the land makes it easy. But the old trail's fuel had been cut low by the city's crews. Bless those boring budget meetings, and the engines painted foam, where Scrub had ideas. A backburn took the appetite out of the main flank. Sparks hopped the fence once, licked a wooden planter, and smoldered into a tantrum that died under a boot and a hose line. In the middle of it, the developer showed up in a fresh hard hat he did not need. He looked confused, and then useful. Where do you want the skid steer? He asked the captain, who pointed without caring, whose logo was on the door. The machine carved a swath of dirt like a ribbon. A cheap, ugly, perfect fire break. Later, I'd roll my eyes at the performative hat. In the moment, I took the help. Cars left the lanes clear. People drove slow. No one tried to outsmart the map. A dad handed me his spare inhaler and said, just in case, because he remembered the last training slide. A teenager with a skateboard blocked a driveway until the med van rolled out. Grinning, had his own temporary authority. A guy who once complained about flamingos knocked on doors like a deacon. Funny. The way crises file down the edges and show the grain of the wood. Karen stood on the clubhouse steps with a radio and a clipboard and a face like someone finally found the right key for the lock she'd carried inside all year. Room for 3 more in the kindergarten classroom. She told Sarah, "We've got blankets and the quiet cart." She stuck a star sticker on her own cardigan and didn't notice. The ridgeline went from orange to sullen to black. The engines idled at ease. Then reluctantly. Then not at all. The captain gave the all clear with a nod that felt like a benediction. We unwound. We counted heads and pets, and one borrowed turtle in a shoebox. We texted the last uncle who always shows up late to the group chat, like a sitcom character. He showed up anyway, and got a lemon bar and a hug, and the bedtime story he'd missed. Back at the pocket homes. Smoke, smell, clung to the trim, but not to the future. A single fence panel looked singed like it had learned a lesson about wind. A lawn chair was, well, a memory. That was it. The rest was intact as stubbornness. When the neighbors drifted back in little caravans, the street looked like a parade had already happened. Someone set a broom against a tree, and it passed from hand to hand like communion. Another person unlabeled and then relabeled 4 boxes of donated clothes because Karen's spirit had crept into them, and sorry labels help. Mia rolled to the ramp and touched the top rail the way you touch a headstone when the name matters. "We did it," she whispered. "Like, all of us." "Yeah," I said. "All of us." The fire marshal, my old partner, walked up from the line. Face smudged. Grin clean. "You ran the plan," he said. "Without drama. Without locking anything that should open. Trying." I said. "We're getting better at not being dumb." He laughed. "That's the whole game," he said. "Safety is mostly the absence of dumb." The next afternoon, a city council member stopped by with a resolution certificate that made Betty tear up and made me itch because paper doesn't put out fires. But okay, the gesture was good. It said we demonstrated community resilience. I tucked it in the clubhouse frame right above the map magnet. Karen stared at it like a mirror where she liked what she saw for once. We held a potluck not because we needed carbs, but because we needed a ritual to put the smoke back in the sky and out of our heads. Walt toasted with lemonade. "To the birds," he said, "and to the fools who moved rocks." Everyone laughed. Then he added, "Softer." "And to the yellow door." Mia asked. "That ramp," he said, "always was a door." We added one more constellation that weekend, Evan small and steady near the top rail, where you grab on days when everything tilts. Karen brought the brush with the yellow ribbon and didn't explain where it came from. She didn't need to. We dabbed tiny dots in a quiet pattern and didn't name it out loud. Names live fine in chests. The developer came back to thank us for not letting his pocket homes become kindling. He tried the hard hat again. This time, I didn't roll my eyes. I just said, "We'll hold you to the trees." He nodded. "We'll plant extra," he said. He did. I counted. Twice. Spring spilled into summer like someone had turned the neighborhood's faucet too far open. Kids chalked the cul-de-sac into a galaxy. The book box became a swap meet for mysteries and cookbooks, and a dog-eared memoir some neighbor read aloud on their porch like a hymn. The pool gate swung easy. The panic bar was shiny from hands that felt safe. We kept doing small, boring, brave things. We rotated the emergency drills. We posted the checklist on the bulletin board by the mailboxes. We passed a budget where access and safety came before decor. We wrote a sentence in the covenants that said exactly this: if aesthetics and access conflict, access wins. I thought it would be controversial. It wasn't. People had watched smoke at their fence line and chosen the right God. Not everything got neat. A new guy complained about a trampoline. A sign blew down, and someone wrote hi on the empty stake, because this place has a sense of humor now. The skeleton wore sunglasses through spring, and someone put a paper hat on him on Independence Day, and he has, frankly, earned the right to stay forever. On a humid night in July, we hosted new neighbor orientation in the clubhouse. Name tags. Star stickers. Yeah. We're on brand. Sarah did the slideshow. The slide with the ramp got a small cheer that made my ears hot. I told a very short version of the long story, and then shut up because this is a neighborhood, not a memoir. During Q&A, a woman raised her hand, nervous and smiling. What do you do when a rule feels wrong? Say so. Karen answered before I could. Out loud. In a meeting, with your name on a tag. Then let us fix it or argue with you honestly. Either way, nobody is a violation. She said it like a person who'd had to lay down a weapon to use her hands for better work. The room believed her. And I did too. Later, after the folding chairs clapped and the lights dimmed, Mia and I rolled onto the porch with bowls of ice cream that melted at the speed of summer. The sky was a mess of stars and airplane freckles. The ramp shone faintly under the porch, light yellow, holding the night back, just enough to be kind. Dad, she said around a spoon, when you first painted it, did you think it would change? Everything. No, I said. I thought it would change the morning. Well, she shrugged. Mornings add up. They do, I said. And we ate in the happy quiet that lives between a fight you won and the next small thing you'll do, because winning isn't an end. It's a habit. If you're watching this, and your porch feels smaller than your life, if a clipboard says your kid's front door is a sightline problem, if someone paints beige on your stars, listen. You're not a violation. You're a neighbor. Find one other person with a pen and a lemon bar and a bad mood about injustice. And start. Knock. Petition. Vote. Train. Label boxes like a benevolent librarian. Learn where your fire lanes are and where your stubborn lives. Put a panic bar on the gate. And a star sticker on your name. What would you do here? Anyone else had a HOA? Try to make your life fit their palette. Tell me in the comments. Tell us so the next street knows they ain't alone. We keep each other.